While my daughter and son-in-law were standing in the estate attorney's office, staring at documents that had just stripped them of a $3.2 million inheritance, and watching me sign papers transferring everything to the local children's hospital foundation, I was sitting in my wheelchair with a calm smile, finally understanding that sometimes the family members who abandon a 70-year-old woman in a hospital parking lot during the worst blizzard in 20 years are about to discover they just left behind someone with 40 years of financial planning expertise and the legal connections to rewrite their entire future in a single afternoon. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been abandoned by family members during your most vulnerable moment, only to show them exactly what that betrayal cost them? Share your story below, because today you're going to learn that sometimes the people who treat you as disposable are about to witness the most expensive lesson in loyalty they'll ever receive. This story is about the February evening when I realized that my own daughter, the child I'd raised as a single mother after my husband's death, put through law school with money I'd earned managing investment portfolios for 3 decades, supported through her early career struggles, and helped establish her successful practice with my professional connections, had been systematically treating me like a burden whose medical needs were inconvenient interruptions to her comfortable lifestyle. When I discovered that the daughter I'd sacrificed everything for, taught everything I knew about financial responsibility and professional networking, and trusted with my most vulnerable health moments as I aged, had been quietly resenting my medical appointments while assuming my estate planning was just a formality that would eventually benefit her family without question or gratitude. My name is Margaret Elizabeth Harrison, and at 70 years old, I thought I'd found the perfect balance of maintaining my independence while staying close to family by moving into the guest suite of my daughter's home in suburban Denver after my recent hip replacement surgery. For 8 months, this arrangement had seemed like a reasonable solution for a widowed financial advisor who wanted to recover properly while remaining near her daughter's family and continuing to manage a small portfolio of longtime clients who valued my decades of investment expertise. The guest suite arrangement that everyone had agreed was temporary and mutually beneficial had actually been my way of ensuring I could contribute to household expenses while receiving the support I needed during recovery, all while maintaining the professional relationships and financial independence that had defined my entire adult life. What I hadn't expected was that my daughter Rebecca and her husband David would view my presence in their home not as temporary family support during medical recovery, but as evidence that I was becoming a permanent burden whose health issues were disrupting their social calendar and whose continuing professional activities were embarrassing reminders that their lifestyle depended on my financial generosity. But to understand the full scope of the betrayal that unfolded during that devastating blizzard night, and why my response would permanently alter our family's financial future, you need to know about the life of professional achievement and family sacrifice I'd built before Rebecca and David decided my vulnerability was an inconvenience rather than an opportunity to demonstrate the love and loyalty I'd spent 40 years earning through my unwavering support of their dreams and ambitions. The 4-bedroom colonial house in Denver's prestigious Cherry Hills neighborhood, where I'd been recovering, had been purchased by Rebecca and David in 2019 with a significant down payment that I'd provided as an early inheritance gift to help them establish themselves in the kind of neighborhood that would support David's growing dental practice and Rebecca's aspirations for partnership at her law firm. My contribution to their home purchase had been $400,000. Money I'd earned through careful investment management and financial planning services that had built substantial wealth over 4 decades of helping clients navigate market volatility, while building long-term security for their families and retirement goals. The money had come from my personal investment portfolio, accumulated through the same conservative strategies and disciplined saving that I'd been teaching clients since 1983. Every dollar had been earned through professional expertise, careful market analysis, and the kind of long-term thinking that had made me one of Colorado's most respected financial advisors. The Cherry Hills neighborhood itself represented the pinnacle of Denver's suburban success, with tree-lined streets, custom homes averaging $1.2 million, and the kind of social prestige that had been important to Rebecca and David as they'd established their professional practices and built their network of affluent friends and colleagues. Rebecca's law practice, Harrison and Associates Family Law, had been built with the benefit of my professional connections and the credibility that came from operating in the same legal and financial circles where I'd been establishing relationships for decades. My introduction to potential clients, referrals from my financial planning network, and the reputation I'd built for integrity and competence had provided Rebecca with advantages that most young attorneys could only dream of receiving. David's dental practice had similarly benefited from my financial support and professional guidance. The initial practice loan, equipment financing, and working capital that had enabled him to establish Cherry Hills Dental Care had been secured with my personal guarantee and supplemented with direct financial assistance that had minimized his business risk while maximizing his opportunities for success. The combined value of my financial support for Rebecca and David's professional and personal establishment had exceeded $650,000 over the 5 years since Rebecca's law school graduation. This investment had been made with love, pride, and the expectation that family members who received such substantial support would demonstrate appropriate gratitude and loyalty when circumstances required them to provide care and assistance in return. But my investment in their success had gone far beyond direct financial assistance to include the kind of mentoring and professional guidance that had accelerated their career development while protecting them from the financial mistakes that often derailed young professionals during their establishment years. My professional background had made the temporary dependency particularly challenging for someone who'd spent 40 years helping others achieve financial independence and security. As a certified financial planner and investment advisor, I'd built a practice based on helping clients maintain control over their financial futures, while building wealth that would support their families and charitable goals for generations. My career had begun in 1983 when I'd started as an entry-level analyst at Denver Investment Management, one of Colorado's most respected wealth management firms specializing in comprehensive financial planning for high-net-worth individuals and families throughout the Rocky Mountain region. The position had paid $28,000 annually, requiring me to manage household expenses and Rebecca's childcare costs, while also pursuing the additional education and professional certifications that would be necessary for advancement in the competitive financial services industry. Rebecca had been 3 years old when I'd started at Denver Investment Management, and balancing her needs with career demands had required the kind of careful time management and financial discipline that had characterized my entire approach to professional and personal responsibilities. The financial services industry in the 1980s had been challenging for women, requiring exceptional competence and professional persistence to establish credibility with clients who often assumed that serious financial advice should come from male advisors with traditional backgrounds in banking or economics. The assumption that women lacked the mathematical abilities and analytical judgment necessary for sophisticated investment management had been a constant professional obstacle that had required superior performance and unshakable confidence to overcome. Mrs. Harrison, one of my earliest clients, had said during our initial consultation, "I'm sure you're very capable, but shouldn't I be working with one of the senior male advisors for something as important as my retirement planning?" The skepticism had been both insulting and motivating, driving me to develop expertise that was so comprehensive and results-oriented that client gender preferences became irrelevant in the face of superior portfolio performance and exceptional service quality. But my analytical skills and genuine interest in helping people achieve their financial goals had quickly distinguished me from colleagues who were more focused on sales commissions than long-term client relationships and investment performance that would actually build lasting wealth and security. My approach to financial planning had been built on understanding that successful wealth management required not just investment expertise, but also careful attention to each client's specific goals, risk tolerance, and life circumstances that would affect their financial needs over decades of changing economic conditions and personal situations. Margaret has an exceptional gift for understanding both the technical aspects of investment management and the personal goals that drive individual financial decisions. Thomas Richardson, my first supervisor, had written in a performance review that had accelerated my career development. Her clients consistently achieve superior results because she combined sophisticated market analysis with careful attention to their specific needs and risk tolerance. The promotion to senior financial analyst had come after 18 months. Recognizing both my technical competence and my ability to build client relationships that generated consistent business growth and exceptional client satisfaction ratings that had distinguished my work from that of more experienced colleagues. As a senior financial analyst, I'd been responsible for managing portfolios worth over $15 million, while also developing new client relationships and mentoring junior staff members who were learning the comprehensive approach to wealth management that had become my professional specialty. My specialty had quickly become comprehensive financial planning for successful professionals and small business owners who needed investment strategies that would support both current lifestyle needs and long-term wealth-building goals that would provide security for multiple generations. The foundation of my practice had been built on understanding that successful financial planning required not just investment expertise, but also careful attention to estate planning, tax optimization, and risk management that would protect clients' wealth during market volatility, while ensuring that their financial legacy would support their families and charitable interests according to their values and priorities. By 1990, I'd been promoted to senior financial advisor and had been managing portfolios worth over $35 million for clients who valued my conservative approach to wealth building and my emphasis on long-term growth strategies that prioritized security and sustainability over short-term speculation and high-risk investments. The client base I'd developed had included successful doctors, attorneys, business owners, and executives who had appreciated my systematic approach to financial planning and my commitment to providing service that went far beyond basic investment management to include comprehensive financial education and strategic planning that enhance their understanding of wealth building and preservation. Margaret Harrison has transformed our financial situation from chaotic to organized and from uncertain to secure. Dr. Patricia Williams, one of my longtime clients, had written in a testimonial that had become central to my marketing materials. Her expertise and personal attention have given us confidence in our financial future while providing returns that have exceeded our expectations for over 15 years. My client relationships had been built on trust, competence, and the kind of personal attention that had made their financial success a source of genuine satisfaction, rather than just professional achievement. Many of my clients had become friends over decades of working together, and their trust in my judgment had been one of the most rewarding aspects of my career. The approach that had distinguished my practice had been based on education and communication that ensured clients understood not just what I was recommending, but why specific strategies would serve their long-term interests, and how different market conditions might affect their portfolio performance and financial planning objectives. During the market volatility of the early 1990s, my conservative investment philosophy and emphasis on diversification had protected client portfolios, while many other advisors had seen their clients suffer significant losses due to aggressive strategies and inadequate risk management. While other advisors were chasing high-risk, high-reward investments, Margaret was building portfolios that provided steady growth and protection during market downturns. James Mitchell, a client who'd worked with me for over 20 years, had noted in a referral letter that had generated substantial new business. Her approach proved its value during every market correction, and her clients consistently outperformed more aggressive strategies over the long term. The decision to pursue my Certified Financial Planner designation in 1995 had been motivated by my commitment to maintaining the highest professional standards while also expanding my expertise in estate planning, tax strategy, and insurance planning that would enable me to provide even more comprehensive service to clients with complex financial situations and sophisticated planning needs. The CFP certification process had required extensive additional education, comprehensive examinations, and ongoing professional development that had enhanced my technical knowledge while also providing credentials that had distinguished my practice. from less qualified competitors who were offering financial advice without appropriate training and certification. The decision to establish Harrison Financial Planning as an independent practice in 2002 had been motivated by my desire to focus exclusively on the kind of comprehensive wealth management that had become my specialty, working with clients who valued long-term relationships and sophisticated financial planning over aggressive sales tactics and product pushing. The transition to independent practice had required substantial personal investment and professional risk, as I'd been leaving a secure position with Denver Investment Management to establish a business that would depend entirely on my ability to attract and retain clients who valued quality financial planning and were willing to pay appropriate fees for comprehensive service. But my client relationships had been strong enough that over 80% of my Denver Investment Management clients had chosen to transfer their accounts to Harrison Financial Planning, providing immediate business foundation and demonstrating the trust and confidence that I'd built through nearly 2 decades of exceptional service and superior investment performance. The independent practice had also provided opportunities to expand my service offerings and develop specialized expertise in areas that had been particularly important to my client base, including estate planning for high-net-worth families, business succession planning for small business owners, and charitable giving strategies that would maximize tax benefits while supporting community organizations and causes that reflected clients' values and philanthropic interests. Over the following 2 decades, Harrison Financial Planning had served over 200 clients, helping them build combined wealth exceeding $150 million, while also achieving personal financial goals that had supported comfortable retirements, children's education, and charitable giving that reflected their values and community commitments. My fee structure had been based on assets under management rather than commissions, ensuring that my financial success was directly tied to client investment performance and long-term satisfaction rather than product sales that might serve my interests more than theirs. The approach had been both ethical and profitable, generating annual income that had ranged from $180,000 to $320,000 during the peak years of my practice, while also building client relationships that had provided professional satisfaction and personal fulfillment that had made work a source of joy rather than just economic necessity. My own financial success had been substantial, with careful investment and savings strategies building a personal estate worth approximately $3.2 million by the time of my hip replacement surgery. This wealth had been accumulated through conservative investment approaches, real estate appreciation, and the income from a successful practice that had provided both professional satisfaction and the financial independence that had supported my family and community involvement for decades. The portfolio composition had been carefully diversified across asset classes and investment vehicles that reflected the same conservative philosophy I'd been recommending to clients. 40% domestic equity investments in blue-chip companies with strong dividend histories, 25% international equity investments for geographic diversification, 20% fixed income investments including municipal bonds and treasury securities, 10% real estate investment trusts, and 5% alternative investments, including precious metals and commodity funds. The real estate component of my wealth had included the Boulder home where Robert and I had lived for 28 years, purchased for $185,000 in 1995 and worth approximately $850,000 by 2024, due to Colorado's robust real estate appreciation, and the home's location in one of Boulder's most desirable neighborhoods. The Boulder house had been my pride and joy, a contemporary design that Robert and I had customized over the years to create the perfect environment for entertaining clients and hosting family gatherings. Every detail had been carefully planned, from the mountain views that captured Colorado's natural beauty to the open-concept layout that had been perfect for the dinner parties and business meetings that had been central to our professional and social lives. But after Robert's death from a heart attack in 2019, the house had felt overwhelming rather than welcoming. The maintenance requirements and isolation had made the hip replacement recovery period a perfect opportunity to temporarily relocate, while deciding whether to downsize permanently or return to the Boulder property once my mobility was fully restored. The decision to temporarily move in with Rebecca and David had been both practical and strategic. My hip replacement surgery had been scheduled for June 2023, with a recovery period that would require several months of physical therapy and careful movement that made living alone temporarily unsafe and impractical. The guest suite where I'd been living featured a private entrance, full bathroom with handicap-accessible shower, and sitting area that had made it possible for me to maintain independence while being close enough for assistance during the challenging months of hip replacement recovery and physical therapy. The space had been beautifully appointed with furniture from my Boulder home, including my antique writing desk, where I'd continued to manage client communications and investment reviews, my favorite reading chair positioned near the window overlooking Rebecca's garden, and family photographs that had made the temporary living situation feel more like home than institutional care. My contribution to their household expenses had been $2,500 monthly, covering utilities, groceries, and additional costs associated with my presence, while also providing Rebecca and David with extra income that had helped with their mortgage payments and household budget during a period when David's practice had been experiencing seasonal fluctuations in patient volume. The financial arrangement had seemed fair and mutually beneficial, allowing me to pay for the convenience and assistance I needed, while providing Rebecca and David with compensation for their time and effort in accommodating my recovery needs and transportation requirements. More importantly, the temporary living arrangement had provided an opportunity to strengthen family relationships, while I navigated the health challenges that were part of aging, creating memories with my beloved granddaughter Emma, while also ensuring that Rebecca and David understood my continued capabilities and independence despite temporary physical limitations. Emma, who was 12 years old and in 7th grade at Denver Academy, had been the greatest joy of the living arrangement. Her enthusiasm for spending time with her grandmother, helping with my physical therapy exercises, and sharing her school activities and social experiences had provided emotional support that had accelerated my recovery while also building memories that I'd treasured. "Grandma Maggie, I love having you here," Emma had said during one of our evening conversations. "You help me with my math homework better than anyone, and you tell the best stories about when Mom was my age." The relationship with Emma had reminded me why family connections were so important and had reinforced my belief that the temporary inconvenience of recovery would be worth the opportunity to build stronger relationships with the people I loved most. "Mom, we're so glad you're staying with us during your recovery," Rebecca had said when I'd first moved into the guest suite. "Emma loves having Grandma here, and we want to make sure you have everything you need to heal properly and get back to your normal activities." The support and care that Rebecca and David had expressed during my initial recovery period had seemed genuine, and had reflected the kind of family values and mutual support that I'd tried to instill throughout Rebecca's upbringing as a single mother balancing career demands with parenting responsibilities. David had been particularly helpful during the first few weeks after surgery, driving me to physical therapy appointments and helping with grocery shopping and household tasks that had been difficult while I'd been using a walker and learning to navigate with limited mobility. "Margaret, you've done so much for our family over the years," David had said during one of our early conversations about the living arrangement. "It's our pleasure to help you during your recovery, and we want you to feel completely comfortable here for as long as you need." The gratitude and appreciation they'd expressed had seemed to acknowledge the substantial financial and professional support I'd provided over the years, suggesting that they understood the reciprocal nature of family relationships and the importance of demonstrating loyalty and care when circumstances required it. During the first 3 months of my recovery, our family dynamics had been harmonious and mutually supportive. Rebecca had regularly asked about my comfort and needs. David had been helpful with transportation and household assistance, and Emma had been a constant source of joy and companionship that had made the recovery period almost enjoyable rather than just medically necessary. The professional activities I'd continued during recovery had also seemed to impress rather than concern them. My ability to conduct client consultations via video conference, review investment portfolios using my laptop, and maintain business relationships despite physical limitations had demonstrated that age and temporary mobility challenges didn't necessarily affect cognitive abilities or professional competence. "Mom, I'm amazed at how you're managing your business while recovering from major surgery," Rebecca had observed during one of our family dinners. "Your clients are lucky to have someone so dedicated and competent managing their investments." The respect and admiration they'd shown for my continued professional activities had reinforced my belief that the temporary living arrangement was strengthening rather than straining our family relationships, while also allowing me to maintain the independence and purpose that had always been central to my identity and self-worth. Standing in that guest suite 8 months ago, surrounded by the financial planning awards and client testimonials that represented 4 decades of professional achievement, I had no understanding that the family members I'd been supporting financially and professionally for years were about to treat my temporary medical needs as evidence of declining capability rather than a normal part of aging that required temporary assistance and family support. The financial expertise, professional relationships, estate planning knowledge, and accumulated wealth that Rebecca and David were taking for granted were actually going to become the foundation for teaching them the most comprehensive lesson they'd ever receive about family loyalty, gratitude, and the consequences of treating someone's vulnerability as an opportunity for convenience, rather than a chance to demonstrate love and support. Sometimes the people who think your health challenges make you a burden are about to discover you're actually someone with the power to restructure their entire financial future in ways they never imagined possible. Rebecca and David were about to learn that abandoning someone in their moment of greatest need was the beginning of the most expensive mistake they'd ever make in their personal and financial lives. The investigation that would follow would expose months of systematic resentment disguised as family care, and the response would transform our family dynamics forever, while teaching them that some people fight back with consequences more lasting and more financially devastating than anything they could ever imagine. What's your story? Have you ever had family members take your generosity for granted while treating your needs as inconveniences? Share it in the comments below, because sometimes the people who forget where their advantages came from need to be reminded in ways they'll never forget. Standing in my guest suite that December morning, reviewing the client portfolios and financial statements that covered my antique writing desk, I realized I needed to understand how I'd reached this point of gradual dismissal from family members who should have been celebrating my continued professional competence and financial acumen, rather than treating my expertise as outdated nostalgia whose time had passed. But to comprehend the full scope of what was building toward that devastating blizzard night abandonment, you need to know about the life of financial mastery and client dedication I'd built before Rebecca and David decided my professional legacy was something to be managed rather than respected. A life of investment breakthroughs, industry leadership, and the kind of financial wisdom that had made their systematic underestimation both possible and ultimately catastrophic. My journey to that frustrating December morning had begun 70 years earlier, when I'd been born Margaret Elizabeth Thompson to parents who understood that a woman's education and professional competence were not optional luxuries, but essential foundations for survival and dignity in a world that rarely offered women second chances or easy paths to financial independence and professional recognition. My father, William James Thompson, had been a mathematics professor at the University of Colorado, specializing in statistical analysis and probability theory that had helped develop the mathematical models used in early computer programming and data analysis systems throughout the 1960s and 1970s. He'd spent his career understanding complex mathematical relationships, managing academic research teams, and ensuring that theoretical principles were applied to practical problems that would advance human knowledge and technological capability. "Margaret," my father had said during one of our regular Sunday evening conversations about my future plans, "the most important thing you can learn is that mathematical precision and human understanding must work together to create financial Strategies that serve people for generations. Anyone can memorize formulas, but it takes real expertise to apply mathematical principles to help families build lasting wealth and security. My mother, Dorothy Rose Thompson, had been equally influential in shaping my understanding of what was possible for an educated woman willing to work harder and think more strategically than the people around her. She'd worked as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm in Boulder, while also managing our household with the kind of meticulous attention to detail and analytical precision that had kept our family's finances both organized and optimized despite the economic constraints that had characterized academic families in the 1950s and 1960s. "Darling," my mother had told me during my high school years, "never let anyone convince you that being good at mathematics and understanding financial relationships is somehow unfeminine or inappropriate. The women I know who have the most security and independence are those who understand how money works, can analyze investment opportunities, and refuse to depend on other people for their economic survival or financial decision-making." The Thompson household had been intellectually stimulating and financially conscious in ways that had prepared me for the financial services career I would eventually build. Dinner conversations had regularly included discussions of investment principles, economic theory, mathematical analysis, and the importance of building financial systems that could function reliably under pressure while also contributing to families' long-term wealth and security. Our home had been filled with financial magazines, mathematics textbooks, and the kind of analytical thinking that had made complex investment problems seem solvable rather than overwhelming. By age 14, I'd already been helping my father with basic statistical calculations and had developed sophisticated understanding of probability theory, risk analysis, and the relationship between mathematical modeling and financial planning. That would characterize my entire approach to wealth management. My academic journey had begun at Boulder High School, a public school known for its rigorous mathematics and science programs, and its emphasis on preparing students for engineering and analytical careers rather than just traditional liberal arts education. The school's approach to education had emphasized logical thinking, precise communication, and the kind of intellectual discipline that would serve me well in competitive professional environments throughout my career. At Boulder High, I'd excelled in advanced mathematics, statistics, and economics, while also developing the organizational skills and attention to detail that would characterize my entire approach to professional responsibilities. The school's student body had included children of university professors, engineers, and business professionals who understood that analytical education was the primary path to economic advancement and professional recognition in Colorado's growing financial services and technology industries. Miss Thompson, my calculus teacher, had written in a recommendation letter that I'd treasured throughout my career, demonstrates the rare combination of mathematical intelligence and practical wisdom that characterizes natural financial analysts and investment advisors. She has the analytical skills to understand complex market relationships and the communication abilities to explain sophisticated concepts in ways that help people make better financial decisions. My senior thesis project at Boulder High had focused on the relationship between mathematical modeling and investment performance, research that had required me to analyze historical market data, statistical correlation patterns, and investment strategies while also developing original mathematical models that demonstrated how analytical thinking could improve investment decision-making and risk management. The University of Colorado's Business School had been the obvious next step, offering one of the most respected finance programs in the Rocky Mountain region and a curriculum that combined rigorous mathematical training with practical education in financial analysis, investment management, and the business relationships that were essential for success in professional financial services. During my 4 years at the University of Colorado, I'd maintained a 3.95 GPA while also working part-time as a research assistant for the finance department and completing internships with Denver area investment firms that had provided hands-on experience in every aspect of financial analysis, from initial client consultation to portfolio management and investment performance evaluation. The finance program at Colorado had been particularly demanding, requiring students to develop expertise in mathematical analysis, economic theory, accounting principles, and investment strategies, while also completing complex research projects that demonstrated creativity, analytical competence, and understanding of how financial markets functioned as integrated systems that must serve both individual investors and broader economic development. Margaret has demonstrated exceptional ability in both the theoretical and practical aspects of financial education, my investment analysis professor had written during my senior year. Her research projects consistently demonstrate sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and mathematical modeling, while also exhibiting the kind of practical wisdom and ethical judgment that characterizes truly professional financial advisors. My senior thesis project at Colorado had examined innovative approaches to risk-adjusted portfolio performance measurement, focusing on how traditional investment analysis could be enhanced with more sophisticated mathematical models that would provide better guidance for long-term wealth building and retirement planning. The project had required extensive research into market history, statistical methodology, and emerging technologies while also developing original analytical frameworks that demonstrated practical applications of these concepts. The thesis had been selected for presentation at the Rocky Mountain Regional Finance Conference and had received recognition from the Colorado chapter of the Financial Planning Association as an outstanding example of how young professionals could contribute to solving contemporary investment challenges while respecting established principles of conservative wealth management and client service. After graduating summa cum laude from Colorado in 1979, I'd spent 6 months working for a small accounting firm in Boulder, providing financial analysis services for small business clients and individual taxpayers who needed professional guidance but couldn't afford the fees charged by larger firms. The position had been excellent preparation for understanding the business aspects of financial services practice and had given me experience in the kind of hands-on problem-solving that would become central to my career specialization in comprehensive financial planning. The Boulder firm experience had also introduced me to the complex relationship between theoretical financial knowledge and client reality, as I'd watched family after family struggle with investment decisions that required both mathematical analysis and careful consideration of personal circumstances that couldn't be captured in textbook examples or academic case studies. Margaret, you have a natural talent for translating complex financial concepts into language that helps people make better decisions, my supervisor at the Boulder firm had observed after I'd successfully helped a young family develop their first comprehensive financial plan. You don't just understand investment theory, you understand how people actually think about money and how to build financial strategies that work in the real world. One of my most successful projects at the Boulder firm had involved helping a recently widowed woman understand and reorganize her deceased husband's complex investment portfolio that had been managed by multiple advisors without coordination or overall strategy. The project had required 6 months of intensive analysis, account consolidation, and strategic reorganization that had simplified her financial life while improving her investment performance and reducing her management fees. Ms. Thompson has demonstrated exceptional ability in developing practical solutions for complex financial situations, the client had written in a testimonial letter. Her analytical skills and personal attention made it possible for me to understand my financial situation for the first time since my husband's death. Her expertise gave me confidence and security during the most difficult period of my life. The widowed client project had been particularly meaningful because it had demonstrated how sophisticated financial analysis could transform overwhelming complexity into manageable clarity, helping someone navigate the most challenging financial period of their life while building long-term security and independence. The project had also given me my first taste of the satisfaction that came from using professional expertise to serve people during their most vulnerable moments. It was during my time at the Boulder firm that I'd first begun to understand the enormous gap between what most people needed from financial planning and what was actually available from traditional investment advisors who focused on product sales rather than comprehensive analysis and long-term client relationships. This insight had led directly to my decision to seek a position with Denver Investment Management, where I believed I could develop the expertise necessary to specialize in the kind of comprehensive financial planning that could transform how families thought about wealth building, risk management, and the relationship between financial strategy and quality of life. The interview process at Denver Investment Management had been comprehensive and challenging, involving multiple meetings with senior partners, portfolio managers, and client relationship specialists who were evaluating not just my analytical abilities but also my potential for building the kind of client relationships that would drive long-term business success in Denver's competitive financial services market. Ms. Thompson, Harrison Mitchell, the firm's managing partner, had said during my final interview, "Wealth management is ultimately about understanding how families want to live and having the analytical expertise to create investment strategies that support those aspirations while building lasting financial security. Do you think you can develop that kind of understanding while also mastering the complex technical skills that distinguish truly professional financial planning?" My answer had been based on my experience working with diverse clients at the Boulder firm. "Mr. Mitchell, I've learned that successful financial relationships are built on listening carefully to what clients really need, understanding the analytical frameworks that must guide investment decisions, and developing strategies that serve both practical requirements and long-term wealth-building goals. I believe my background in mathematical analysis and my experience with real client situations has prepared me to provide that kind of comprehensive service." The starting position at Denver Investment Management had been as a junior analyst in the wealth management division, earning $28,000 per year, while learning the sophisticated analytical and client relationship approaches that had made Denver Investment Management one of the most respected financial planning firms in the Rocky Mountain region. But what had distinguished me from other entry-level employees had been my systematic approach to understanding not just how to analyze investment opportunities, but why certain strategies worked better than others, and how different client circumstances required customized approaches that couldn't be addressed through standard product recommendations. Within my first month at Denver Investment Management, I'd immersed myself in the firm's portfolio of client relationships, studying every aspect of their analytical methodology, investment philosophy, and client service strategies. I'd also begun developing relationships with the portfolio managers, research analysts, and client service specialists who were essential partners in transforming financial analysis into practical wealth-building strategies. Within 3 months, I'd begun identifying opportunities to improve analytical accuracy and client satisfaction by suggesting better integration between quantitative analysis and qualitative client consultation, more effective communication during portfolio review processes, and innovative analytical techniques that could enhance both investment performance and risk management while controlling fees and complexity. Margaret processes complex financial information faster and more accurately than junior analysts with years of experience, Harrison Mitchell had noted in my first performance review. But more importantly, she understands how analytical decisions affect client outcomes and satisfaction in ways that demonstrate genuine professional maturity and technical sophistication. The promotion to intermediate analyst had come after 18 months, recognizing not just my analytical abilities, but also my capacity to manage client relationships, coordinate with external investment managers and consultants, and handle the complex administrative responsibilities that were essential for successful wealth management practice in an increasingly competitive and technically demanding market. As an intermediate analyst, I'd been responsible for managing portfolios worth over $25 million while also developing new client relationships and contributing to the firm's research and analytical capabilities that supported investment decision-making across all client accounts. The most challenging aspect of the intermediate analyst position had been learning to balance analytical precision with client communication and relationship management, developing investment recommendations that satisfied mathematical optimization requirements while also addressing client concerns and preferences that couldn't be captured in quantitative models. My first major independent client relationship had been with Dr. Robert Harrison, a Denver cardiologist who had wanted comprehensive financial planning that would support his medical practice while building wealth that would provide security for his family and fund his eventual retirement from active practice. The relationship with Dr. Harrison had been particularly challenging because it had required developing investment strategies that would accommodate the irregular income patterns and liability concerns that characterized medical practice while also providing the growth and diversification necessary for long-term wealth building and risk management. Margaret has created a financial strategy that perfectly balances our need for liquidity and growth with protection against the risks that are inherent in medical practice, Dr. Harrison had written in a testimonial that had become central to my professional development. Her analytical expertise and personal attention have given us confidence in our financial future while providing investment performance that has exceeded our expectations for over 5 years. The Dr. Harrison relationship had been featured in Denver Investment Management's client newsletter and had received recognition from the firm's management as an outstanding example of how comprehensive analytical work could create superior client outcomes while building the kind of long-term relationships that distinguished professional wealth management from basic investment product sales. The success of the Dr. Harrison relationship had led to additional referrals from Denver's medical community, providing me with a specialty focus that had enabled me to develop expertise in the unique financial planning challenges that faced medical professionals while building a client base that valued sophisticated analytical work and comprehensive service. During the market volatility of the late 1980s, my conservative analytical approach and emphasis on diversification and risk management had protected client portfolios, while many other advisors had seen their clients suffer significant losses due to aggressive strategies and inadequate attention to downside protection. While other analysts were recommending high-risk growth strategies, Margaret was building portfolios that provided steady appreciation and protection during market corrections. Dr. Patricia Williams, a client who'd worked with me for over 80 years, had noted in a referral letter that had generated substantial new business. Her analytical approach proved its value during the 1987 market crash, and her clients consistently outperformed more aggressive strategies while taking less risk. The promotion to senior analyst in 1987 had placed me among Denver Investment Management's senior analytical staff and had given me responsibility for the firm's most complex and valuable client relationships, including family offices, small business owners, and high-net-worth individuals who required the highest levels of analytical expertise and personalized service. As a senior analyst, I'd also been responsible for mentoring junior staff, developing new analytical approaches that kept Denver Investment Management at the forefront of wealth management innovation, and maintaining relationships with the industry, professionals, and community leaders who were essential sources of referrals and collaborative opportunities that supported the firm's continued growth and reputation. It was during my time as a senior analyst that I'd met Robert Harrison, Dr. Harrison's younger brother, who had been working as a commercial real estate developer specializing in medical office buildings and professional complexes throughout the Denver metropolitan area. Robert had been impressed by the comprehensive financial planning I'd developed for his brother and had sought my professional advice for his own investment needs and business planning. Margaret, I've never met a financial analyst who understands both the technical aspects of wealth management and the practical realities of building a business, Robert had said during our early professional consultations. Your analytical work has helped my brother achieve financial security while maintaining his medical practice, and I'd like to explore how your expertise could help me build long-term wealth through real estate development. The professional relationship with Robert had gradually evolved into personal friendship and eventually romance, as we'd discovered shared interests in analytical thinking, outdoor activities, and the kind of intellectual conversation that had made our time together both professionally stimulating and personally satisfying. Our wedding in 1990 had been a celebration not just of personal commitment, but also of professional partnership, as Robert's real estate expertise and my financial planning capabilities had created opportunities for collaboration that had enhanced both our careers while building the foundation for a marriage based on mutual respect, shared goals, and complementary professional skills. The birth of Rebecca in 1991 had added new dimensions to our relationship, while also requiring careful balancing of career demands with parenting responsibilities that had tested our organizational skills and commitment to both professional excellence and family priorities. Margaret has managed the transition to motherhood while maintaining the analytical excellence and client relationships that have made her one of our most valuable senior analysts, Harrison Mitchell had noted in my performance review following Rebecca's birth. Her ability to balance family responsibilities with professional commitments demonstrates the kind of personal organization and dedication that characterizes truly exceptional financial professionals. The decision to pursue my certified financial planner designation in 1995 had been motivated by my commitment to maintaining the highest professional standards while also expanding my expertise in estate planning, tax strategy, and insurance planning that would enable me to provide even more comprehensive service to clients with complex financial situations and sophisticated planning needs. The CFP certification process had required extensive additional education, comprehensive examinations, and ongoing professional development that had enhanced my technical knowledge while also providing credentials that had distinguished my practice from less qualified competitors who were offering financial advice without appropriate training and certification. The CFP designation represents the gold standard in financial planning education and professional competence. Dr. Sarah Peterson, who had become both a client and professional colleague, had observed. Margaret's commitment to earning this certification demonstrates her dedication to providing the highest quality financial planning services and staying current with evolving best practices in wealth management. The promotion to principal analyst in 1998 had recognized not just my individual analytical achievements, but also my contributions to firm management, business development, and the professional mentoring that had helped Denver Investment Management maintain its position as one of Colorado's most respected wealth management practices. As a principal analyst, I'd been responsible for strategic planning, policy development, and oversight of Denver Investment Management's entire analytical division, managing a team of 8 analysts and researchers while also maintaining direct involvement in the firm's most important and complex client relationships. My leadership responsibilities had included developing new analytical services and investment approaches that differentiated Denver Investment Management from competitors, maintaining relationships with key clients and industry partners, and ensuring that all analytical work met the firm's standards for excellence, accuracy, and client service that had built the firm's reputation over 25 years of practice. But by 2002, I'd begun to feel constrained by the institutional limitations and administrative requirements that had made it difficult to provide the kind of personalized, comprehensive service that had always been central to my approach to client relationships and financial planning. The decision to establish Harrison Financial Planning as an independent practice had been motivated by my desire to focus exclusively on the kind of comprehensive wealth management that had become my specialty, working with clients who valued long-term relationships and sophisticated analytical work over aggressive sales tactics and standardized product recommendations. The transition to independent practice had required substantial personal investment and professional risk, as I'd been leaving a secure position with guaranteed income to establish a business that would depend entirely on my ability to attract and retain clients who valued quality financial planning and were willing to pay appropriate fees for comprehensive analytical services. But my client relationships had been strong enough that over 85% of my Denver Investment Management clients had chosen to transfer their accounts to Harrison Financial Planning, providing immediate business foundation and demonstrating the trust and confidence that I'd built through nearly 2 decades of exceptional service and superior analytical performance. The independent practice had also provided opportunities to expand my service offerings and develop specialized expertise in areas that had been particularly important to my client base, including estate planning for high-net-worth families, business succession planning for medical practices and small businesses, and charitable giving strategies that would maximize tax benefits while supporting community organizations and causes that reflected clients' values and philanthropic interests. Over the following 20 years, Harrison Financial Planning had served over 200 clients, helping them build combined wealth exceeding $150 million, while also achieving personal financial goals that had supported comfortable retirements, children's education, and charitable giving that reflected their values and community commitments. My fee structure had been based on assets under management rather than commissions, ensuring that my financial success was directly tied to client investment performance and long-term satisfaction rather than product sales that might serve my interests more than theirs. The approach had been both ethical and profitable, generating annual income that had ranged from $180,000 to $320,000 during the peak years of my practice, while also building client relationships that had provided professional satisfaction and personal fulfillment that had made work a source of joy rather than just economic necessity. The client base I'd developed had included successful doctors, attorneys, business owners, executives, and retirees who had appreciated my analytical approach to wealth management and my commitment to providing service that went far beyond basic investment management to include comprehensive financial education and strategic planning that enhanced their understanding of wealth building and preservation. Margaret Harrison has transformed our understanding of financial planning from a necessary chore to an exciting opportunity for building lasting wealth and security. James and Patricia Morrison, clients who'd worked with me for over 15 years, had written in a testimonial that had captured the essence of my approach to client relationships. Her analytical expertise and personal attention have given us confidence in our financial decisions, while providing returns that have consistently exceeded our expectations. My own financial success had been built on the same conservative investment, philosophy, and disciplined saving that I'd been teaching clients since 1983. Every investment decision had been based on careful analysis, diversification principles, and long-term thinking that had protected my wealth during market volatility, while building the substantial estate that would eventually become the foundation for the most important financial planning decision of my life. Standing in my guest suite that December morning, surrounded by the awards, client letters, and professional relationships that represented 40 years of analytical excellence and client service, I had no understanding that the family members I'd been supporting and mentoring for years were about to dismiss my expertise as outdated thinking that needed to be managed rather than respected. The financial planning expertise, analytical capabilities, professional relationships, and accumulated wealth that Rebecca and David were taking for granted were actually going to become the foundation for teaching them the most comprehensive lesson they'd ever receive about respecting experience, honoring family loyalty, and understanding that some people respond to dismissal with financial consequences that reshape everyone's understanding of what's possible when knowledge meets determination and unlimited access to legal and financial resources. Sometimes the people who think your career is just ancient history are about to discover you're actually someone with the power to restructure their entire financial future in ways they've never seen coming and could never afford to replicate themselves. Rebecca and David were about to learn that dismissing someone's professional legacy was the beginning of the most expensive demonstration of financial expertise they'd ever witness. Standing in my guest suite that December evening, reviewing the medical appointment calendar, and family obligations that had structured my life for the past 8 months, I couldn't help but remember how different Rebecca and David's attitude toward my health needs had been just 6 months earlier, when they'd been genuinely supportive of my recovery process and had regularly expressed gratitude for the financial stability my presence provided their household. But what I discovered when that devastating blizzard night unfolded would transform my disappointment and hurt into a cold, calculating determination that would change everything forever and demonstrate that some 70-year-old women fight back with financial consequences that reshape entire family dynamics and inheritance expectations. The peak of our harmonious living arrangement had lasted from June through October 2023, a period when my recovery progress, continued professional activities, and financial contributions had created a family environment that seemed to benefit everyone while strengthening relationships across 3 generations. During this golden period, our family dinners had become regular celebrations of shared success and mutual support. Rather than typical family social gatherings, our time together had provided opportunities for meaningful conversations about Rebecca's legal cases, David's dental practice growth, Emma's academic achievements, and my continued involvement in financial planning for longtime clients who valued my expertise despite my temporary physical limitations. Mom, your advice about our business expansion plans has been invaluable, David had said during one particularly memorable family dinner in August. Your financial analysis helped us understand the cash flow implications of adding another hygienist, and your client referrals have brought in 3 new families who specifically asked for our services because of your recommendation. The business referrals I'd provided to David's dental practice had been based on my professional network of clients and colleagues who appreciated quality service and were willing to pay premium fees for exceptional care. My endorsement had carried significant weight because of the trust and credibility I'd built over 4 decades of professional relationships. Margaret's recommendation means everything to us, Dr. Patricia Williams, one of my longtime financial planning clients, had told David during her first appointment. If Margaret trusts you with her family's dental care, we know you'll provide the kind of professional service and personal attention that we've come to expect from people in her network. Rebecca's legal practice had similarly benefited from my professional connections and strategic advice. Several of my clients had required family law services for divorce proceedings, child custody matters, and estate planning disputes that had generated substantial fee income for Rebecca's practice, while also providing her with experience in high-asset cases that had enhanced her professional reputation. Eleanor, your client referrals have transformed our practice, Rebecca had reported during our regular family business discussions. The Peterson divorce case alone generated $85,000 in fees, and Mrs. Williams's estate planning work has led to 3 additional referrals from families who want the same level of sophisticated legal analysis. My contribution to Rebecca's professional development had gone beyond simple referrals to include strategic guidance about fee structures, client relationship management, and the importance of building long-term professional relationships rather than focusing exclusively on immediate revenue generation. Mom, working with your referrals has taught me to appreciate the value of serving clients who understand quality and are willing to pay appropriate fees for exceptional service, Rebecca had acknowledged. Your approach to professional relationships has influenced how I think about building my own practice and maintaining client satisfaction. The financial stability my presence had provided their household had been equally significant. My monthly contribution of $2,500 had covered not just my personal expenses, but had also provided additional household income that had enabled Rebecca and David to accelerate their mortgage payments, build emergency savings, and pursue lifestyle improvements that would have been difficult to afford on their professional incomes alone. Having Margaret here has actually improved our financial situation, while also providing Emma with the kind of grandparent relationship that money can't buy, David had observed during one of our family planning conversations. Her financial contribution helps with our monthly budget, and her presence gives Emma educational support and emotional stability that enhances our entire family dynamic. Emma's relationship with me had been the greatest joy of the living arrangement. Her enthusiasm for mathematics and analytical thinking had provided opportunities for tutoring and mentoring that had accelerated her academic development while building the kind of intergenerational bond that had enriched all our lives. Grandma Maggie teaches me math concepts that make everything easier at school, Emma had reported to her parents. She explains complex problems in ways that help me understand the principles instead of just memorizing procedures. My algebra grades have improved from B's to A's since she started helping me. The academic support I'd provided Emma had extended beyond mathematics to include help with research projects, writing assignments, and study strategies that had improved her overall academic performance while building her confidence in analytical thinking and problem-solving. During this period, Rebecca and David had also been supportive of my continued professional activities, recognizing that my work with longtime clients provided both intellectual stimulation and additional income that enhanced my independence while demonstrating that age and temporary physical limitations didn't necessarily affect cognitive abilities or professional competence. Mom, we're impressed by how you've maintained your client relationships and continued providing financial planning services while recovering from major surgery, Rebecca had said during one of our family conversations. Your clients obviously value your expertise, and your continued professional activity keeps you engaged and energetic in ways that benefit our entire family. The respect and appreciation they'd shown for my continued professional activities had reinforced my belief that the temporary living arrangement was strengthening, rather than straining our family relationships, while also allowing me to maintain the independence and purpose that had always been central to my identity and self-worth. The first indication that Rebecca and David's attitude toward my presence was beginning to change had come during a family conversation in early November 2023, when Rebecca had made a casual comment about planning for the future that had suggested she was beginning to view my recovery as a permanent arrangement rather than a temporary support situation. Mom, we've been thinking about some modifications to the guest suite that would make it more comfortable for long-term living, Rebecca had said, using language that had suggested assumptions about my future plans that we'd never actually discussed. We could add a small kitchenette and expand the bathroom to make the space more independent and self-contained. The suggestion that I might need a more independent living space had been both surprising and concerning, as it had implied that my current level of integration with family activities was somehow problematic or unsustainable, rather than mutually beneficial and temporarily necessary for recovery. Rebecca, I appreciate the thoughtfulness, but I'm not sure we need to make permanent modifications for what's supposed to be a temporary arrangement, I'd responded, trying to understand whether this suggestion reflected practical planning or a fundamental change in how they viewed my presence in their home. But Rebecca had been prepared with explanations that had revealed she'd been thinking about this issue more extensively than our previous conversations had suggested, presenting ideas about aging in place and family caregiving that had transformed my temporary recovery situation into a permanent care arrangement that I'd never requested or desired. Mom, we're just being realistic about the fact that as you get older, living alone might become more challenging, Rebecca had explained. Having you here has worked well for everyone, and we want to make sure you have the support and safety you need as your mobility and independence change with age. The assumption that my mobility and independence would inevitably decline in ways that would require permanent family supervision had been both insulting and alarming, suggesting that Rebecca viewed my hip replacement recovery as evidence of general aging-related incapacity rather than a specific medical situation with a predictable recovery timeline. David had supported Rebecca's observations with comments about family responsibility and practical planning that had suggested they'd been discussing my future living arrangements without my participation or input, making decisions based on their assumptions about my needs and capabilities rather than my actual preferences and circumstances. Margaret, we think it makes sense to plan ahead rather than waiting for a crisis, David had said. You've been happy here. Emma loves having you around, and it's easier for everyone if we make arrangements that can work long-term, rather than constantly worrying about transitions and changes. The implication that my eventual return to independent living would constitute a crisis, rather than a successful recovery outcome, had revealed how completely their perspective on my situation had shifted from temporary medical support to permanent care management. But what had made their changing attitude even more concerning had been their assumption that my professional activities and continued client relationships were somehow inappropriate or unsustainable, given my age and living situation, despite the obvious success and satisfaction these activities provided. Mom, we've been wondering whether maintaining your client relationships is becoming too stressful, Rebecca had suggested during one of our conversations about my daily activities. You're supposed to be recovering and relaxing, and dealing with other people's financial problems seems like it might be counterproductive to your healing process. The suggestion that helping longtime clients with financial planning was stressful, rather than intellectually engaging and professionally satisfying, had revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of what motivated me and what contributed to my sense of purpose and well-being. Jennifer had been even more direct in expressing her belief that my continued professional activities were somehow inappropriate for someone in my circumstances, speaking with the kind of patronizing concern typically reserved for elderly relatives, who were making obviously poor decisions that required family intervention. Margaret, we're just concerned that you might be taking on more than you can handle, David had said during one of our discussions about my work schedule. At your age and with your recent surgery, maybe it would be better to focus on recovery and family time, rather than trying to maintain professional responsibilities that might be too demanding. The assumption that my age automatically disqualified me from managing professional responsibilities had been particularly insulting, given that my clients were consistently satisfied with my services and my analytical capabilities remained sharp and effective despite temporary physical limitations. By December 2023, Rebecca and David's questioning of my professional activities had evolved into a more systematic pattern of control and condescension that had affected both our family relationships and my ability to maintain the independence and autonomy that had always been central to my identity. The shift had become particularly apparent during daily interactions, where my decisions about appointments, activities, and professional responsibilities had begun to be treated as subjects for family discussion and approval, rather than personal choices that I was capable of making independently. Mom, we need to talk about your appointment schedule, Rebecca had said during one particularly frustrating conversation. You have 3 client consultations this week, plus physical therapy, plus Emma's school event. Don't you think that's too much activity for someone who's supposed to be recovering? The assumption that I needed family approval for my appointment schedule had been a clear signal that my autonomy was being redefined from independent adult decision-making to supervised care management based on their judgments about what was appropriate for someone in my circumstances. David had been even more direct in expressing his belief that my professional activities were becoming burdensome for the family, speaking as though my client relationships were inconveniences that affected household scheduling rather than meaningful work that provided both income and intellectual satisfaction. Margaret, your client calls and meetings are starting to interfere with family activities, David had complained. Last week, Emma had to wait for help with her homework because you were on a conference call, and Rebecca had to change her schedule to drive you to the Morrison consultation. The suggestion that my professional responsibilities were interfering with family activities had ignored the fact that my financial planning work was both flexible and profitable, generating income that more than compensated for any inconvenience, while also maintaining professional relationships that had been valuable for their own business development. But what had made their changing attitude even more insulting had been their assumption that age-related decline in my capabilities was responsible for what they perceived as poor judgment and unrealistic expectations about my continued independence and professional competence. Mom, we understand that accepting limitations can be difficult, Rebecca had said during one particularly condescending conversation. But maintaining your professional activities and insisting on complete independence might not be realistic anymore. We're just trying to help you make responsible decisions about your capabilities and priorities. The suggestion that my desire for independence was evidence of unrealistic expectations, rather than legitimate preferences about how to live my life, had been both personally hurtful and professionally insulting, ignoring decades of evidence about my analytical abilities and judgment. The most concerning aspect of their systematic dismissal had been their apparent belief that my financial resources and estate planning decisions were subjects for family input and guidance rather than personal matters that I was fully capable of managing independently. "Mom, we've been thinking about your financial situation and whether your current investment strategy is appropriate for your circumstances," Rebecca had suggested during one of our family dinners. "Maybe it would make sense to simplify your portfolio and reduce the complexity of managing multiple client relationships and investment accounts." The proposal to simplify my financial affairs had been a transparent attempt to gain influence over my investment decisions and estate planning, while reducing my professional activities and financial independence under the guise of family concern and practical assistance. David had been even more direct in suggesting that my estate planning and inheritance decisions should be coordinated with their long-term financial planning, speaking as though my wealth was a family asset rather than personal property that I had earned and could dispose of according to my own values and priorities. "Margaret, we think it would be helpful for all of us to have a better understanding of your estate planning and inheritance arrangements," David had said. "As your family, we want to make sure we're prepared to help manage your affairs when necessary and that your financial legacy reflects your values and family priorities." The assumption that they would eventually manage my affairs and that my financial legacy should reflect their family priorities had been shocking evidence of how completely they had redefined our relationship from mutual support to inheritance anticipation. By mid-December 2023, the pattern of systematic control and financial assumption had become so pronounced that I'd decided to investigate what Rebecca and David had actually been planning behind my back, and whether their expressions of concern about my capabilities had been accompanied by specific actions to position themselves for greater control over my financial affairs and living situation. My first step had been to contact several of my longtime clients and professional colleagues to understand their perceptions of my competence and professional capabilities, and to determine whether Rebecca and David's concerns about my declining abilities had any basis in observable reality or professional feedback. "Margaret, your analytical work has been as sharp and insightful as ever," Patricia Williams had said when I'd called to discuss my continuing professional activities. "Your investment recommendations and financial planning advice continue to provide exceptional value, and I've seen no decline in your capabilities or judgment. If anything, your experience and perspective have made your advice even more valuable." The client feedback had been uniformly positive, with every client expressing complete satisfaction with both the quality of my work and my continued professional competence. Several clients had specifically mentioned that they'd chosen to maintain their relationships with me rather than transitioning to younger advisors because they valued the expertise and judgment that came from decades of experience. "Your analytical approach and conservative investment philosophy have protected our wealth through multiple market cycles," Dr. Robert Peterson had noted. "We trust your judgment precisely because you have the experience and expertise to understand long-term wealth building in ways that younger advisors simply cannot provide." But my investigation had also revealed that Rebecca and David had been making inquiries about elder care services, estate planning attorneys, and financial management services that suggested they'd been planning for greater control over my affairs. Regardless of my actual capabilities or preferences, through my professional network, I'd learned that David had been meeting with estate planning attorneys and had been discussing options for financial power of attorney and healthcare decision-making authority that would provide legal mechanisms for managing my affairs if I were deemed incapacitated or unable to make independent decisions. David Whitmore has been asking about procedures for obtaining financial and healthcare power of attorney for elderly relatives. Patricia Morrison, an estate planning attorney in our professional network, had mentioned during a chance encounter at a professional networking event. He seemed particularly interested in the legal standards for determining incapacity and the process for transferring decision-making authority to family members. The discovery that David had been researching legal mechanisms for gaining control over my financial affairs while continuing to express concern about my declining capabilities had been shocking evidence of the systematic planning that had been occurring behind their expressions of family support and care. My investigation had also revealed that Rebecca had been discussing my living situation and long-term care needs with her law firm colleagues, seeking advice about elder care planning and family responsibility that suggested she'd been viewing my presence as a permanent care situation rather than temporary recovery support. Rebecca has been asking about best practices for managing elderly parents' transition to dependent living, James Richardson, a colleague at Rebecca's law firm, had reported. She specifically mentioned concerns about maintaining independence versus accepting family supervision for aging relatives who might not recognize their declining capabilities. The revelation that Rebecca had been seeking advice about managing my transition to dependent living, while I'd been successfully maintaining professional relationships and recovering from surgery, had been the final piece of evidence about their true intentions and their complete disregard for my actual capabilities and preferences. The final betrayal had occurred during the massive blizzard of February 15, 2024, when Rebecca and David had used what should have been a family emergency response situation to demonstrate their true feelings about my value and their priorities when convenience conflicted with family loyalty and basic human decency. The evening had begun with weather warnings about an unprecedented winter storm that was expected to dump over 2 feet of snow on the Denver metropolitan area while producing wind gusts exceeding 60 miles per hour and creating life-threatening conditions for anyone caught outdoors without proper shelter and transportation. At 3:30 p.m., I'd received a call from Dr. Patricia Williams requesting an emergency consultation about a financial crisis that had developed when her investment advisor had been arrested for securities fraud, potentially exposing her retirement portfolio to catastrophic losses that would have destroyed her financial security and forced her to sell her medical practice under distressed circumstances. "Margaret, I need your help immediately," Dr. Williams had said, her voice reflecting genuine panic about her financial situation. "The FBI has frozen all accounts managed by Peterson Investment Group, and I need someone I trust to help me understand my options and develop a strategy for protecting whatever assets can be salvaged. You're the only financial advisor I trust. Completely, and I'm desperate for professional guidance." The emergency consultation had been both professionally appropriate and financially necessary, as Dr. Williams faced potential losses exceeding $1.2 million if immediate action wasn't taken to transfer salvageable assets and implement legal strategies for recovery and protection. "I'll drive to Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital immediately," I'd told Dr. Williams. "Meet me in the medical staff lounge, and we'll review your situation and develop an action plan. This kind of emergency requires immediate professional attention, and we can't wait for the storm to pass." Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital had been the obvious meeting location because it provided a secure, professional environment where Dr. Williams could access her financial documents, while also being easily accessible despite the developing weather conditions. When I'd informed Rebecca and David about the emergency consultation, their response had been immediate opposition and condescending dismissal of both the professional necessity and my capability to handle the situation safely and effectively. "Mom, you can't possibly drive in this weather," Rebecca had said, her tone suggesting that my age automatically disqualified me from making decisions about professional emergencies or weather-related driving. "This is exactly the kind of poor judgment we've been worried about. Dr. Williams will have to find another advisor or wait until the storm passes." The suggestion that I should abandon a long-time client during a financial emergency because of weather conditions had been both professionally insulting and personally shocking, revealing how completely Rebecca had redefined my professional competence and personal judgment as subjects for her approval and control. David had been even more direct in expressing his belief that my professional responsibilities were inconveniences that should be subordinated to family scheduling and weather concerns rather than legitimate obligations that required professional attention regardless of external circumstances. "Margaret, this is ridiculous," David had said. You're not driving anywhere in this weather, and we're not enabling poor decision-making that could put you in danger. Dr. Williams will have to handle her financial problems without your help today. The assumption that my professional judgment about emergency client needs was poor decision-making that required their enabling had been the final demonstration of how completely they'd redefined our relationship from mutual respect to parental supervision. But what had made their response even more shocking had been their casual announcement that they had dinner plans that evening that were more important than ensuring my safety or supporting my professional obligations during emergency circumstances. "We have dinner reservations at the Broadmoor with the Peterson family tonight," Rebecca had announced, referring to expensive restaurant plans that would cost several $100s. David's practice has been trying to develop a relationship with Dr. Peterson's surgical group, and we can't cancel this meeting because of your client emergency. The revelation that they'd prioritized a business dinner over family safety during a life-threatening blizzard had been shocking evidence of how completely they'd redefined family priorities and personal values. "You'll have to find your own transportation if you insist on this ridiculous meeting," David had said. "We're not missing an important business opportunity because you can't accept reasonable limitations about driving in dangerous weather." The decision to call a taxi service had been both practically necessary and symbolically devastating, as I'd realized that the family members I'd supported financially and professionally for decades were unwilling to provide basic transportation assistance during an emergency because their social plans were more important than my professional obligations or personal safety. "Alpine Taxi, this is Margaret Harrison," I'd said when I'd called for transportation. "I need a ride to Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital immediately. I understand the weather conditions are dangerous, but this is a professional emergency that can't be delayed." The taxi driver, Miguel Rodriguez, had been both professional and concerned about the weather conditions, but had agreed to provide transportation with appropriate safety precautions and emergency equipment. "Mrs. Harrison, this storm is getting very dangerous," Miguel had said when he'd arrived at Rebecca's house. "I'll get you to the hospital safely, but you should plan to stay there until the weather improves. This isn't a night for unnecessary travel." The consultation with Dr. Williams had been successful, requiring 3 hours of intensive analysis and strategic planning that had enabled her to transfer $850,000 in recoverable assets to secure accounts while implementing legal strategies that would eventually result in substantial recovery of fraudulently managed investments. "Margaret, you've saved my financial future," Dr. Williams had said when we'd completed the emergency planning session. "Your expertise and willingness to help during this crisis have protected my retirement security and possibly saved my medical practice. I can never adequately express my gratitude for your professional dedication and personal sacrifice." But when I'd called Rebecca and David at 9:30 p.m. to request transportation home, their response had revealed the complete scope of their selfishness and disregard for family loyalty and basic human decency. "Mom, we're still at dinner, and the roads are completely impassable," Rebecca had said, her tone suggesting that my request for transportation was an unreasonable inconvenience rather than a basic family obligation during emergency circumstances. "You'll have to find somewhere to stay at the hospital until the storm passes. We can't leave our dinner to pick you up in this weather." The assumption that I should find somewhere to stay at the hospital rather than expect family transportation assistance during a blizzard had been the most shocking demonstration of their true priorities and values that I'd ever experienced. David had been even more callous in his response, speaking as though my emergency situation was a predictable consequence of poor judgment, rather than a professional obligation that had required family support and understanding. "Margaret, this is exactly why we've been concerned about your decision-making," David had said. "Getting stranded at the hospital because of a client meeting was entirely predictable, and we're not responsible for the consequences of your poor planning and unrealistic expectations about our availability." The suggestion that my poor planning was responsible for their unwillingness to provide emergency transportation during a life-threatening blizzard had been the final piece of evidence about their character and their complete lack of family loyalty and basic human compassion. At 10:15 p.m., sitting in the Presbyterian St. Joseph Hospital waiting room while the worst blizzard in 20 years raged outside, I'd made the decision that would change everything forever and would demonstrate exactly what happened when people mistake kindness for weakness and assume that family loyalty is a one-way obligation that doesn't require reciprocal respect and consideration. Rather than spending the night feeling sorry for myself or making excuses for Rebecca and David's inexcusable behavior, I'd used the quiet hours in the hospital waiting room to conduct the most important financial planning session of my entire career, completely restructuring my estate planning and inheritance arrangements to reflect the true values and character that family members had demonstrated through their actions. My first call had been to Patricia Morrison, my estate planning attorney, who had been working late at her office despite the weather conditions and had been available for emergency consultation despite the unusual circumstances. "Patricia, this is Margaret Harrison," I'd said when she'd answered her phone. "I need to implement immediate changes to my will and estate planning arrangements. This is an emergency situation that requires your professional attention tonight, regardless of weather conditions." Patricia had been both surprised and concerned about the urgency of my request, but had agreed to conduct a comprehensive review and revision session via secure video conference that would enable us to implement legally binding changes to my estate planning documents immediately. "Margaret, what's happened that requires such urgent changes?" Patricia had asked. "This kind of emergency revision usually indicates a serious family crisis or health emergency. Are you safe and mentally competent to make these decisions under current circumstances?" My explanation of the evening's events and the pattern of systematic dismissal and financial assumption that had preceded the blizzard night abandonment had convinced Patricia that my decision-making was both rational and necessary, reflecting careful analysis of family behavior rather than emotional reaction to temporary circumstances. "Margaret, based on your description of recent events and your family's systematic dismissal of your capabilities and independence, I believe you're making appropriate decisions to protect your autonomy and ensure that your estate planning reflects your actual values rather than assumed family obligations," Patricia had said. "Let's implement comprehensive changes that will achieve your objectives while ensuring legal protection against future challenges." The revision session had lasted 4 hours, during which we'd completely restructured my inheritance arrangements to reflect the reality of family relationships and character rather than traditional assumptions about family loyalty and mutual support. The original will had provided the bulk of my $3.2 million estate to Rebecca, with smaller bequests to Emma's education fund and various charitable organizations that had been important to Robert and me throughout our marriage. The arrangement had been based on traditional family inheritance patterns and the assumption that Rebecca would provide appropriate support and care during my aging years while maintaining respect for my independence and professional capabilities. The revised will had eliminated Rebecca and David from inheritance consideration entirely, instead directing the bulk of my estate to the Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation, with additional substantial bequests to the Colorado Financial Planning Association Scholarship Fund, the University of Colorado Business School, and a new endowment for elder care advocacy and financial abuse prevention. I want my estate to support organizations and causes that actually reflect my values and professional legacy, I'd explained to Patricia. Rebecca and David have demonstrated that they view my wealth as an entitlement rather than a gift, and their treatment of me during my recovery and tonight's abandonment have shown their true character and priorities. The total charitable bequest had amounted to $2.8 million, with the remaining $400,000 directed to Emma's education fund, with specific provisions ensuring that Rebecca and David would have no control or influence over the educational support provided to their daughter. Emma is the only family member who has consistently demonstrated love, respect, and appreciation for our relationship, I'd explained. She deserves educational support that will enhance her opportunities, but her parents have forfeited any claim to my estate through their systematic dismissal of my independence and their abandonment during tonight's emergency. But the will changes had been only the beginning of a comprehensive financial restructuring that would demonstrate the full scope of my planning capabilities and the complete consequences of Rebecca and David's systematic dismissal and abandonment. My second call had been to James Mitchell, my property management attorney, who had been standing by for emergency real estate consultation despite the weather conditions. "James, I need to implement immediate changes to my Boulder property ownership and the Cherry Hills house situation," I'd said. "Recent events have convinced me that my current living arrangement is neither sustainable nor appropriate, and I need to protect my real estate interests while ensuring my independence and security." The Boulder house, worth approximately $850,000, had been held in my name with Rebecca designated as the beneficiary through transfer-on-death arrangements that would have provided her with immediate ownership upon my death. The emergency restructuring had eliminated these arrangements while also implementing immediate plans for selling the property and relocating to a luxury senior living community that would provide the independence and professional environment I desired. "I want to list the Boulder property immediately and use the proceeds to purchase a luxury condominium in a community that provides both independence and appropriate support services," I'd explained to James. "I refuse to remain in a living situation where my presence is viewed as a burden and my professional activities are treated as inappropriate for someone my age." The real estate restructuring had also included immediate termination of my financial contributions to Rebecca and David's household, effective immediately upon my departure from their home following the blizzard emergency. "The $2,500 monthly contribution I've been providing will be redirected to support my new living arrangements and continued professional activities," I'd informed James. "Rebecca and David have demonstrated that they view my financial support as an entitlement rather than a generous gift, and their behavior has forfeited any claim to continued assistance." My third call had been to Dr. Robert Peterson, the president of the Colorado Financial Planning Association, who had been available for emergency consultation despite the late hour and weather conditions. "Robert, this is Margaret Harrison," I said. "I need your assistance in implementing an immediate transition to a new professional practice environment that will support my continued client relationships while providing the independence and respect that my experience and expertise deserve." Dr. Peterson had been both concerned about my emergency circumstances and supportive of my decision to maintain professional independence despite family pressure to retire and accept supervised living arrangements. "Margaret, your professional competence and client satisfaction have never been in question," Dr. Peterson had assured me. "If you're facing family pressure to reduce your professional activities based on age discrimination rather than actual capability, the association will provide full support for maintaining your independence and continuing your practice in whatever environment you choose." The professional consultation had resulted in immediate arrangements for office space in a luxury business center that catered to independent professionals and provided the kind of prestigious environment that would support continued client relationships while demonstrating my professional status and capabilities. "We have a corner office available immediately in the Cherry Creek Business District," Dr. Peterson had reported. "The space includes full administrative support, conference facilities, and access to professional services that will enhance your practice while providing the prestige and independence that someone with your credentials deserves." When the blizzard had finally ended at 6:30 a.m. on February 16, 2024, I'd arranged for professional transportation to Rebecca's house to collect my belongings and inform the family about the comprehensive changes that their behavior had necessitated. Miguel Rodriguez, the taxi driver who had provided transportation during the emergency, had returned with a larger vehicle to assist with moving my personal items and professional materials to temporary storage, while permanent arrangements were finalized. "Mrs. Harrison, I heard on the news that you spent the night at the hospital," Miguel had said. "I'm sorry your family couldn't pick you up during the storm. That's not right, especially for someone who was helping a client during an emergency." Miguel's respectful concern had provided a stark contrast to Rebecca and David's callous abandonment. demonstrating that strangers often showed more consideration and basic human decency than family members who had benefited from years of financial support and professional assistance. Rebecca and David had been having breakfast when I'd arrived to collect my belongings, their casual demeanor suggesting they felt no guilt or concern about their behavior during the previous evening's emergency. "Mom, we're glad you're safe," Rebecca had said, her tone suggesting mild concern rather than genuine remorse about abandoning me during a life-threatening blizzard. "We figured you'd find somewhere comfortable to wait out the storm. How was your client meeting?" The assumption that I'd found somewhere comfortable, rather than been stranded due to their selfishness, had been a final demonstration of their complete lack of empathy and understanding about the consequences of their behavior. David had been even more casual in his response, speaking as though the previous evening's abandonment had been a minor inconvenience rather than a shocking betrayal of family loyalty and basic human decency. "Margaret, we hope you understand that driving in that weather would have been dangerous for everyone," David had said. "We made the responsible decision to stay safe rather than risk an accident that could have hurt multiple people." The suggestion that their business dinner had been more important than my safety, and that abandoning me had been responsible decision-making, had been the final confirmation that they were incapable of understanding or acknowledging the severity of their behavior. My response had been calm, professional, and comprehensive, delivering information about the consequences of their systematic dismissal and abandonment in the same analytical tone I'd used for 40 years of financial planning consultations. "Rebecca and David, I need to inform you about several important changes that your behavior has necessitated," I'd begun. "Last night's abandonment and the pattern of dismissal and control that preceded it have convinced me that our current living arrangement is neither sustainable nor appropriate for any of us." The announcement of my immediate departure had been surprising but not shocking, as they'd clearly been expecting eventual changes to our living situation based on their conversations about long-term planning and realistic expectations. But the revelation of the comprehensive financial restructuring had been devastating, transforming their understanding of our family dynamics and their financial expectations in ways they'd never anticipated or imagined possible. I spent last night implementing comprehensive changes to my estate planning, real estate arrangements, and financial support systems, I'd continued. Your systematic dismissal of my capabilities and last night's abandonment have demonstrated character and values that are incompatible with the inheritance and support arrangements I'd previously established. Rebecca's face had gone pale as she'd begun to understand the implications of my announcement, while David had looked confused about the connection between their behavior and my financial decision-making. "Mom, what exactly are you saying?" Rebecca had asked, her voice reflecting growing concern about the specific changes I'd implemented. "I'm saying that my will has been completely revised to eliminate your inheritance and redirect my estate to charitable organizations that actually reflect my values and professional legacy," I'd replied. "The Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation will receive the bulk of my $3.2 million estate, with additional bequests to educational and professional organizations that support ethical behavior and family loyalty." The revelation that they'd lost a $3.2 million inheritance had been shocking enough, but the additional financial consequences had been even more devastating to their immediate and long-term financial planning. "Additionally, my monthly contribution to your household expenses will end immediately. The Boulder house will be sold to fund my relocation to an independent living community, and my professional referrals and business support will be redirected to advisors and service providers who demonstrate appropriate respect for experience and expertise." David's calculation of the total financial impact had been immediate and devastating. Loss of $3.2 million inheritance, loss of $2,500 monthly household contribution, $30,000 annually, loss of professional referrals worth approximately $50,000 annually to his dental practice, and loss of legal referrals worth approximately $75,000 annually to Rebecca's law firm. "Margaret, you can't be serious about this," David had said, his voice reflecting genuine panic about the financial consequences. "We understand you're upset about last night, but permanently changing your estate planning seems like an extreme overreaction to a single incident." The characterization of systematic dismissal and blizzard night abandonment as a single incident had been the final demonstration of their complete inability to understand the severity and pattern of their behavior. "David, this isn't about a single incident," I'd replied with the same calm, analytical tone I'd used for decades of client consultations. "This is about a systematic pattern of dismissal, control, and financial assumption that culminated in your abandonment of a 70-year-old woman during a life-threatening blizzard because your social plans were more important than family loyalty and basic human decency." Rebecca had attempted to minimize the significance of their behavior while also trying to negotiate modifications to the financial consequences, speaking as though my estate planning decisions were family matters subject to discussion and compromise rather than personal choices that reflected my values and their demonstrated character. "Mom, we made a mistake last night, and we're sorry," Rebecca had said, her tone suggesting she believed an apology could somehow undo months of systematic dismissal and the shocking abandonment. "But changing your entire estate plan seems disproportionate to the situation. Can't we discuss this and find a compromise that works for everyone?" The assumption that my financial decisions were subject to compromise and should work for everyone had revealed how completely Rebecca misunderstood both my autonomy and the consequences of their systematic mistreatment. "Rebecca, there is no compromise when it comes to respect, dignity, and basic family loyalty," I'd replied. "You and David have demonstrated through your actions that you view my wealth as an entitlement and my presence as a burden. My estate planning now reflects those realities rather than traditional assumptions about family relationships that you've proven to be false." The most difficult aspect of the comprehensive restructuring had been explaining to Emma how her parents' behavior had affected our family relationships, while ensuring she understood that my love for her remained unchanged despite the financial consequences that would affect her family's lifestyle and expectations. "Grandma Maggie, I don't understand what's happening," Emma had said when I'd found her in her room, tears streaming down her face as she'd sensed the tension and conflict that had transformed our previously harmonious household. "Why are you leaving? Did I do something wrong?" The conversation with Emma had been both heartbreaking and necessary, requiring age-appropriate explanations about adult behavior and consequences, while reassuring her that she bore no responsibility for the family crisis that had developed due to her parents' choices and character. "Emma, you haven't done anything wrong," I'd assured her, sitting on her bed and holding her hands while explaining the situation in terms she could understand. "Grandma Maggie loves you very much, and that will never change. But sometimes adults make choices that have consequences, and your parents have made choices that mean I can't live here anymore." The explanation had focused on principles of respect, loyalty, and character, rather than specific financial details that would have been inappropriate for a 12-year-old to manage or understand fully. "I need to live somewhere where I'm treated with respect and where my professional work is valued rather than seen as a problem," I'd continued. "Your parents have forgotten that families should support each other, especially during difficult times." Emma's response had demonstrated the maturity and character that had made our relationship so special throughout the 8 months we'd lived in the same house. "Grandma Maggie, I understand that Mom and Dad haven't been treating you fairly," Emma had said, her voice showing wisdom beyond her years. "I heard them talking about making you stop working and moving you to a nursing home, and I knew that was wrong. You're too smart and independent for that." The revelation that Emma had overheard Rebecca and David discussing plans to move me to a nursing home had been shocking confirmation of how far their planning had progressed without my knowledge or consent. "I want you to know that your education fund remains secure and substantial," I'd assured Emma. "I've arranged for $400,000 to support your college education and graduate school, with protections ensuring that your parents cannot access or control those funds. Your future opportunities will not be diminished by your parents' behavior." Emma's gratitude and understanding had provided emotional comfort during the most difficult family crisis of my life, reminding me that love and loyalty were still possible even when other family relationships had been damaged beyond repair. "Thank you, Grandma Maggie," Emma had said, hugging me tightly. "I'm sorry Mom and Dad treated you so badly. I hope you'll still visit me sometimes and help me with my math homework." "Emma, nothing will ever prevent me from maintaining our relationship," I'd promised. "I'll always be your grandmother, and I'll always be available to help you with school, provide guidance about life decisions, and celebrate your achievements. Your parents' behavior doesn't change my love for you." Within 1 week of the Blizzard Night abandonment, I'd successfully implemented a complete transition to independent living and professional practice that had demonstrated both my continued capabilities and my determination to maintain autonomy and respect, regardless of family pressure or age-based assumptions. The luxury condominium I'd purchased in the prestigious Belcaro neighborhood had been a 2,200-square-foot penthouse unit with mountain views, modern amenities, and access to concierge services that had provided both independence and appropriate support without the condescension and control that had characterized my living situation with Rebecca and David. "Mrs. Harrison, we're delighted to welcome you to Belcaro Towers," Jennifer Martinez, the community director, had said during my move-in orientation. "Your professional background and community involvement make you exactly the kind of resident who enhances our community atmosphere and demonstrates that luxury senior living can support continued independence and achievement." The respectful treatment and recognition of my professional accomplishments had provided a stark contrast to Rebecca and David's systematic dismissal and had reinforced my decision to prioritize environments where experience and expertise were valued rather than managed. The office space in the Cherry Creek Business District had been equally impressive, providing a prestigious professional environment that had enhanced my client relationships while demonstrating my continued commitment to excellence and professional service. "Margaret, your new office perfectly reflects your professional status and commitment to providing superior financial planning services," Dr. Patricia Williams had observed during her first visit to my new practice location. "The transition has actually enhanced your professional image while providing the independence and respect that someone with your credentials deserves." The client response to my relocation and continued independence had been overwhelmingly positive, with several clients expressing admiration for my determination to maintain professional activity, despite family pressure and age-based assumptions about retirement and dependence. "Your decision to maintain independence and continue serving clients demonstrates exactly why we value your guidance and expertise," James Morrison had written in a letter that had captured the sentiment of many longtime clients. "Your experience and judgment are assets to be celebrated, not limitations to be managed." Over the following 6 months, Rebecca and David had been forced to confront the complete financial and professional consequences of their systematic dismissal and abandonment, as every aspect of their lifestyle and business development had been affected by the loss of my support and professional connections. The immediate impact of losing $20,500 monthly household contribution had required significant adjustments to their budget and lifestyle, forcing them to reduce discretionary spending and delay home improvements and vacation plans that had been funded by my presence in their household. "We had to cancel our planned European vacation because we can't afford the expense without Margaret's monthly contribution," David had complained to friends, speaking as though my financial support had been an entitlement rather than a generous gift that they'd forfeited through their behavior. Rebecca's law practice had been similarly affected by the loss of high-value referrals from my professional network, reducing her annual income by approximately $75,000, while also eliminating access to the sophisticated clientele that had enhanced her professional reputation and business development. "The Peterson family has transferred their legal business to another firm," Rebecca had reported to her law partners. They specifically mentioned that they'd been referred by Margaret Harrison and no longer felt comfortable using our services. given the family situation. David's dental practice had suffered even more significant consequences, losing approximately $50,000 in annual revenue from patients who had been referred through my professional network and who had chosen to transfer their care to other providers when they'd learned about the family conflict. Dr. Williams has moved her entire family to another dental practice, David had told his office manager. She said she could no longer support our business given how we'd treated Margaret during her recovery and the emergency situation. But the most devastating consequence had been the social and professional impact within Denver's professional community, where my reputation and the circumstances of our family conflict had become known through professional networks and community connections. The way Rebecca and David treated Margaret Harrison during her recovery and the blizzard emergency has become common knowledge in the financial planning and medical communities, Dr. Robert Peterson had noted during a professional association meeting. Their behavior reflects poorly on their character and professional judgment, and many of us are reconsidering our business relationships with both their practices. The response from Denver's professional and social communities had been overwhelmingly supportive of my decisions and critical of Rebecca and David's behavior, providing both personal validation and professional recognition that had enhanced my reputation while isolating them from many business and social opportunities. The Colorado Financial Planning Association had presented me with a special recognition award for professional excellence and personal courage in maintaining independence and client service despite family pressure and age discrimination. Margaret Harrison has demonstrated that professional competence and personal dignity are not diminished by age when they are supported by decades of expertise and unwavering commitment to ethical principles, the award citation had read. Her decision to maintain independence and continue serving clients despite family pressure represents the highest standards of professional courage and personal integrity. The Children's Hospital Colorado Foundation had also recognized my estate planning decision with a special donor appreciation event that had celebrated both my professional accomplishments and my commitment to supporting pediatric health care and family services. Margaret Harrison's generous bequest will support our mission for decades to come while honoring a professional legacy built on service, expertise, and commitment to helping families achieve security and stability. Foundation. President Dr. Michael Anderson had said during the recognition ceremony. Her gift reflects values that will inspire our work and demonstrate the lasting impact of a life devoted to professional excellence and community service. The University of Colorado Business School had similarly honored my financial planning scholarship endowment with a special recognition that had celebrated both my professional achievements and my commitment to supporting the next generation of financial planning professionals. The Margaret Elizabeth Harrison Scholarship Endowment will ensure that financial planning education remains accessible to students who demonstrate both analytical excellence and ethical commitment, Dean Patricia Wilson had announced. Margaret's professional legacy and generous support will influence financial planning education for generations to come. Standing in my beautiful penthouse condominium 1 year after the blizzard night abandonment, surrounded by the professional recognition and community support that had resulted from my decision to maintain independence and dignity despite family pressure, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with the complete vindication of my right to live according to my own values and priorities. The professional practice I'd rebuilt in independence had thrived beyond all expectations, with client satisfaction and business growth that had demonstrated the continued value of experience and expertise when they were supported by respect and appreciation rather than dismissal and control. Your decision to maintain independence has enhanced your professional effectiveness while inspiring other seniors to resist family pressure and age discrimination, Dr. Patricia Williams had observed during one of our recent consultations. Your example has encouraged several of my colleagues to continue their professional activities despite family suggestions that they should retire and accept supervised living arrangements. The financial independence I'd achieved through careful planning and strategic decision-making had provided security and autonomy that had enabled me to pursue both professional goals and personal interests without depending on family approval or support from people who had demonstrated their unreliability and lack of respect. Your estate planning decisions have protected your autonomy while ensuring that your wealth will support causes that reflect your values rather than enriching people who failed to demonstrate appropriate appreciation and loyalty. Patricia Morrison had noted during our annual review, your charitable bequests will have lasting impact while teaching important lessons about the consequences of taking family generosity for granted. The relationship with Emma had continued to flourish despite the family conflict, with regular visits and continuing educational support that had demonstrated the possibility of maintaining loving relationships even when other family dynamics had been damaged beyond repair. Grandma Maggie, my math grades are still the best in my class because of everything you taught me, Emma had reported during one of our weekly visits. And I'm applying for the scholarship program you created at the University of Colorado because I want to study business and financial planning just like you. Emma's academic success and career aspirations had provided the greatest satisfaction of all, demonstrating that positive influence and educational support could continue across generations even when adult relationships had been destroyed by poor character and misguided priorities. 6 months ago, Rebecca had made one final attempt to reconcile and restore some portion of the inheritance that she'd forfeited through her systematic dismissal and abandonment, speaking as though our family relationship could be restored through apologies and promises that ignored the fundamental character issues that had created the crisis. Mom, we've learned from our mistakes, and we want to rebuild our relationship, Rebecca had said during a carefully planned conversation. We understand that we treated you poorly, and we're committed to demonstrating the respect and appreciation that you deserve as our family matriarch and professional role model. The language of family matriarch and professional role model had been carefully chosen to suggest respect and appreciation, but had come too late and with too little genuine understanding of the systematic nature of their previous behavior. Rebecca, respect and appreciation are demonstrated through actions over time, not through apologies offered when financial consequences become clear, I'd replied. Your systematic dismissal of my capabilities and abandonment during a life-threatening emergency revealed character and values that cannot be changed through conversation or promises. David had been even more direct in his appeals, focusing on the financial impact of my decisions while minimizing the behavior that had necessitated those consequences. Margaret, we understand you were upset about the blizzard night, but permanently, eliminating our inheritance seems disproportionate to the situation, David had argued. We're asking you to reconsider the estate planning changes and give us an opportunity to demonstrate improved behavior and appreciation. The characterization of systematic dismissal and emergency abandonment as being upset about the blizzard night had demonstrated the continued failure to understand or acknowledge the severity and pattern of their behavior. David, my estate planning reflects the reality of our relationship rather than traditional assumptions about family loyalty that you prove to be false, I'd replied. The consequences you're experiencing are proportionate to the systematic disrespect and ultimate abandonment that you demonstrated over 8 months of deteriorating behavior. The final conversation had ended with my explanation of the broader principles and lessons that their behavior had taught me about family relationships, respect, and the importance of maintaining dignity and independence regardless of age or circumstances. I want other families to understand that financial support and inheritance are gifts that should be earned through demonstrated loyalty, respect, and appreciation rather than assumed based on blood relationships and inheritance expectations, I'd explained. Your behavior has taught me that some people will take advantage of generosity and mistake kindness for weakness, unless there are clear consequences for disrespect and mistreatment. Today, as I sit in my beautiful penthouse overlooking the Rocky Mountains, managing a thriving financial planning practice and preparing for another day of serving clients who value experience and expertise, I feel complete satisfaction knowing that my response to Rebecca and David's systematic dismissal and abandonment has created lasting consequences that reflect my values while protecting my independence and dignity. The estate planning decisions I made during that blizzard night in the hospital waiting room have ensured that my $3.2 million legacy will support children's health care, financial planning education, and elder advocacy, rather than enriching people who demonstrated their unworthiness through systematic disrespect and ultimate abandonment. The professional independence I've maintained has demonstrated that age and temporary physical limitations do not diminish analytical capabilities or professional competence when they are supported by decades of experience and ongoing client relationships built on trust and mutual respect. The community recognition I've received has validated my decisions while inspiring other seniors to resist family pressure and age discrimination that would force them into dependent living arrangements and supervised retirement against their preferences and capabilities. Most importantly, the relationship with Emma continues to provide joy and satisfaction, while demonstrating that love and loyalty can transcend family conflict when they are based on genuine appreciation and shared values rather than financial expectations and convenience. If someone in your life is trying to dismiss your capabilities while treating your generosity as entitlement and your presence as burden, remember my story. Remember that experience and financial independence provide power that can be used to protect dignity and autonomy while teaching important lessons about respect and consequences. Remember that people who mistake kindness for weakness and assume that family relationships provide immunity from accountability might discover they've challenged someone with the knowledge, resources, and determination to restructure their entire financial future in ways they never imagined possible. What's your story? Have you ever had to teach family members about respect and consequences after they took your support for granted while treating your needs as inconveniences? Share it in the comments below and remember to like and subscribe for more stories about turning dismissal into independence and proving that the best response to abandonment is dignity, autonomy, and consequences that reflect true character and values. Because sometimes the best response to people who leave you in a hospital parking lot during a blizzard is showing them exactly what happens when they abandon someone with 40 years of financial planning expertise and $3.2 million worth of inheritance decisions to reconsider. Rebecca and David thought they could dismiss my capabilities while planning my future without my consent. What they actually did was inspire the most comprehensive financial restructuring of my life, while learning that some people respond to abandonment with consequences more lasting and more expensive than anything they could ever imagine. Sometimes the people who think your best days are behind you are about to discover you're actually someone with the power to change their financial future in ways that will remind them forever about the importance of family loyalty, basic human decency, and the consequences of mistaking vulnerability for weakness. That's a lesson worth $3.2 million in redirected inheritance, and every dollar was worth it to prove that respect and loyalty aren't negotiable at any age, and that some abandonments are too costly to forgive when they reveal fundamental character defects that no apology can address. Justice served, independence secured, dignity maintained, legacy protected. The view from 71 is spectacular when you're surrounded by people who respect your capabilities rather than dismiss them. Rebecca and David learned that abandoning someone during a blizzard was the beginning of the most expensive lesson in family loyalty they'd ever receive, and the most permanent demonstration of what happens when you underestimate someone with 4 decades of financial planning expertise and unlimited determination to protect dignity and independence. Respect your elders, especially when they have the power to transform your understanding of consequences, character, and the true cost of abandonment. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.